where there are more and more YouTubes and fewer stories. And this is the television disease that we have all contracted over our lifetimes, where people, especially young people, would rather be amused by a video than they would to read a story. And so we are seeing this profusion of videos on the internet, which I personally don't like, because I can get a lot more information out of a story than I can get out of a YouTube. But we're a movie culture now, and a lot of the information that people are accepting and seeking out are videos rather than stories, and that's just a phenomenon of the technological age.
Yes, sir. I have a whole video page up there, so if somebody can sit for a week there and watch different videos, all related. I think that's to me, this is the service that I play. I read really fast. I read pretty much everything, you know, and so I am more able to scan through stories and information than most people, and I can translate that to the website.
Yeah. Well, here's an example. Here's an example of what I mean. Maybe I can drive this home to you this way. People really don't want to hear about our financial problems. I mean, they do, and they're sympathetic. But really what they want is the news, and the people who are succeeding are just coming out with the news and letting the financial angle fall where it may. In fact, a lot of the people aren't after the financial angle at all. The best people, the people I trust most, aren't after the financial angle at all. And I think, you know, I've been told this a whole number of times, that I should spend a lot less time worrying about my contributions and just go about doing my stories. And in that way, the financial stuff will either take care of itself or it won't. And that's just the way it is. So sometimes I spend a lot of time thinking about that, but most of the time I don't, because there's really so much information out there to be found and digested that it's just unbelievable. But getting back to that point, nobody over a long period of time can continue to ingest this information without coming down with a serious case of frustration and depression, because it's bad story after bad story, and we're all guilty of not providing enough solutions for people to follow. Now we're in a situation where people are coming up with ideas. The most encouraging thing I've seen is the actions in certain states to reject the pronouncements of the federal government. I mean, we see it happening in Arizona, we see it happening in Missouri and many other states, and as far as holding the United States together, that may be the best trend that has developed out of all this. It certainly hasn't gone very far to this point, but it's definitely a good sign. So we can spend a lot of time whining about the harassment we get from the multi-level Jewish media machine, or we can keep coming out with one expose after another and just saying, well, that's what we do. We're going to rise and fall on that. And if we fall, it's going to be as much because of the other people who have followed our lead and are doing it, and in many respects are doing a better job than we are, and that's who the people will follow. So we just have to do a better job and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, I mean, I've always been in business, and I've been publishing for 30 or 40 years. You know, the only thing that has changed for me is that my publishing right now is on the internet as opposed to the putting it in paper. And frankly, I prefer paper. You know,
Well, that was a good thing for its time. That was a very valuable magazine for all the people who weren't on the internet. But now, just about everybody's on the internet, so that's bound to suffer. I mean, you're suffering the same fate as all newspapers have suffered. Newspapers are dying left and right.
Yes, they are.
Because it's all electronic now.
They're solidifying their control over the internet. The bill to allow Obama to shut down the internet or control the internet is going up for a vote right now.
Yeah, I know, but that's not going to stop what's happening now because it's become too far advanced. And, you know, I'm like 9/11 consciousness now. There's almost nobody I know. Well, I can't quite say that, but there are certainly a lot more people now who understand that Israel did 9/11. And there are the websites to prove it. There are the stories to do it. I've been listening to the radio here in the Philadelphia area, and it's just it's kind of a mainstream folk station, and they've mentioned that. They've mentioned a lot of other things, and it's like people know. So it's like the mainstream media doesn't have anywhere near the credibility it used to have, and it's slowly dying. But I know what you mean about being sabotaged by the powers that still do control the mainstream media. The great story, one of the great stories, I've read 20 great stories this morning. One of them was about Obama swimming in the Gulf. And he didn't swim in the Gulf. He swam in a private club in a bay that has no oil in it because it's been blocked off. And they passed that off as swimming in the Gulf. Well, this is typical of what's been done during this whole oil spill, and I think we're about to reach another level of horror about the oil spill because I know plenty of people in Florida who are saying, oh, it's been fine, we never had a problem here, but in fact they are swimming in water that's contaminated and they don't realize it, and they are breathing air that's contaminated and they don't realize that either. So all we can do is, you know, we have to come up with the goods, and the goods keep changing. Sure, there is this underpinning of Jewish influence that has plagued the world all these centuries, and we have to keep reiterating that
I think this would be a good time to tell the audience about the Blue Plague.
The Blue Plague is about people's fingernails and lips turning blue in the New Orleans area because the oxygen content of the air has been reduced by the fumes coming from the Gulf. And precious few people realize it. I watched a video this morning that was filmed at a hotel pool in Gulf Shores, Alabama, where longtime residents, ordinary people, were saying, look at these foolish tourists going out and swimming in the Gulf. They don't know that they're poisoning themselves. But the ironic thing about this video is that the people at the hotel pool were also poisoning themselves just by breathing the air, and they didn't realize that.
Yes.
We got real hard times coming, and there really are no solutions. The only solution that I've been espousing now for, I wrote a story in 2003 when I was just looking at the other day called "Arrest the President Now." That was 7 years ago, Clayton, and we have made very little progress to doing that. But that is the answer. We need to sweep all our government officials from office because they're all colluding in this grand deception that is just about destroying America at this point. We have resistance in America now, but it is way too small and way too late.
The what's happening in the Gulf is still an attack on our economy, our food supply, and the people. As you pointed out, people are getting sick, people are going to be dying, and you know the effects are still showing up from the radiation there in Russia. They're still being plagued with that, especially with these forest fires that have been set. You know, the war seems to be worldwide, and it seems to be against anybody. And it's just what I've always said: the war on terror is a war against anybody, anywhere on Earth that is against the one world government of the bankers, by the bankers, and for the bankers.
It's much worse than we know, Clayton. Much worse than even we know. This whole radiation thing goes really back into the 1920s, actually. And our health has been diminished by radiation ever since then. A lot of diseases, particularly polio, the polio scam. Polio, it turns out, was caused by radiation, which is something I never knew until very recently. there are all these poisons being generated, and do we know the reason why?